Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Civil War Stories by Ambrose Bierce. This is in a Dover Thrift edition. I don't know if you've ever come across Dover Thrift editions. They out Penguin Penguin. If you're unfamiliar with the origin of Penguin, originally they wanted, and I think they still do to great success, deliver the world's classics in an affordable form with decent quality printing. Dover goes one step further. So a lot of their books are in, you could say, a larger format in order to get more words down so they don't have to print as many pages. And it's not, I would say, low quality binding. I've never really had a Dover Thrift edition fall apart on me, but it's done with the most economy, I think, possible. So just as a shout out for Dover Thrift editions, I first ran across them probably in my undergraduate years, and I didn't really know what to make of them. And as I've gone on over the years, I realized, okay, paper quality is a little less, the format's a little bigger, but they're delivered even below what Penguin had originally. They're trying to make it affordable for people who couldn't even afford a Penguin edition. So let's say a Penguin version of this might cost $6, $7 US, and this would cost $3 or $4. So I think they're demonstrating what Ryanair and Southwest Airlines did so many years ago when they took on the legacy carriers and created ultra low cost airlines. There's ultra low cost books as well, even brand new books, and can give people the feeling of a new book at a used book price. So just as a quick shout out to Dover Thrift Editions, I really appreciate it. And in this particular case, they're collecting stories of Ambrose Bierce that may appear in different anthologies. And the story that an American high school student is most likely to have read, which is most likely to be in an anthology. In fact, I can think back there on this shelf, you'll see, well, you can't see because it's so far away, but I have the Norton Anthology of American Literature, which I have from my high school English class, and I'm almost certain that inside that is an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which is one of the short stories in here. So Ambrose Bierce was a veteran of the war between the states. I understand, of course, it's called Civil War Stories, and popularly this is known in the culture as the Civil War in the United States. I would argue it's more appropriately called the War Between the States, but that's a different conversation for a different day, maybe even a different channel. But in Civil War Stories, Ambrose Bierce uses the frame of this great conflict in American history as a delivery method to talk about various subjects, whether that's family relationships, husband and wife relationships, or father-son relationships, children. There's a fantastic episode, which I'll talk about in a moment, regarding this. Fantastic, I don't know if that's the word. Fantastically descriptive, potentially. Beautiful natural descriptions, but perhaps most importantly and always what's relevant in books in this genre, and that what I would include All Quiet on the Western Front, or The Red Badge of Courage, in which you see war through the eyes of the combatants and realize it's nothing as glorious as the press and other people would have you believe. And Bierce uses a technique which is very effective, which makes me feel like he's Edgar Allan Poe on the battlefield. But once he's used the technique on you successfully one time, you will be on the lookout for it again. Now, this doesn't mean that the stories are any less pleasurable to read. It just means that you have this reaction as a reader, oh, you got me last time, I'm not going to let that happen again. And you then pay more attention to the clues that he's left for you throughout. But even though he got me on more than one occasion, I didn't dislike this technique. And I would say, as far as how to read it, you can see it's not a thick book. We're talking about 123 pages all in. This is not a book you should read straight through. So there's a number of stories. There's 16 stories in here. I would argue read 2 or 3 stories a day, and you'll be done with this in a week. And it'll be a very enjoyable experience, and it'll allow you to get down into this world that Bierce has recreated from his own experiences so that you can better appreciate the themes that he's exploring. I want to read you a few of these quotes. I alluded to the fact that he paints nature in this beautiful way. O days when all the world was beautiful and strange, when unfamiliar constellations burned in the southern midnights, and the mockingbird poured out his heart in the moon-gilded magnolia, when there was something new under a new sun. Will your fine, far memories ever cease to lay contrasting pictures athwart the harsher features of this later world, accentuating the ugliness of the longer and tamer life? So this is in a story called What I Saw of Shiloh. The beauty of the phrasing. This isn't someone who's professionally trained as a writer, as if there is ever such a thing anyway. You can apprentice, you can learn, but it's about sitting in the chair and doing the work, and Bierce clearly did that over and over and over, and to our benefit. Another description, which again speaks to the meaninglessness of the war. These tents were constantly receiving the wounded, yet were never full. They were continually ejecting the dead, yet were never empty. What a powerful image of the uselessness of this conflict, particularly in this time period. So 1861 to 1865, we have, as we will see again later in World War I, a big leap in technology that isn't accompanied by a leap in tactics, because the tactics are always adapted to what was learned in the previous war. And the previous war in this time period had been the Mexican War, which had a lot more open space and was in foreign territory, but keeping in mind that generals from both sides of the war were educated in the Mexican War, because they were all fighting for the U.S. Federal Army at that time. So that sort of war, cavalry heavy, open land in a foreign country, wasn't necessarily the best preparation to fight in the United States and then in the southern states in the Confederacy, with an advancement in weapons. And then you also have heavy use of the railroad, which played less of a role in the Mexican-American War. But this helplessness, as particularly if you understand the history of the Battle of Shiloh, which is potentially one of the darkest days for the Confederacy, but a dark day for the Confederacy is also a dark day for America as a whole. And if you understand the Battle of Shiloh's history, then this story will hit home for you. If not, I think just reading this short story, What I Saw of Shiloh, might get you to investigate and learn more about the Battle of Shiloh, and then maybe learn more about the war between the states anyway. In another, he gives us a sense of in another quote, he gives us a sense of these inanimate objects being living things. So in the same story, What I Saw of Shiloh, there is something that inspires confidence in the way a gun dashes up to the front, shoving 50 or 100 men to one side as if it said, "Permit me." Then it squares its shoulders, calmly dislocates a joint in its back, sends away its 24 legs, and settles down with a quiet rattle which says as plainly as possible, "I've come to stay." There is a superb scorn in its grimly defiant attitude. With its nose in the air, it appears not so much to threaten the enemy as deride him. Sometimes we just don't get enough of authors. Sometimes we only ever get one novel out of them, or in this case, a collection of short stories, but that should not lead us to ignore them or to marginalize them. And I think Ambrose Bierce is definitely someone who should be on your radar. And there's no real investment either of time or money. You've got a Dover Thrift edition. You can get it brand new for under $5 or whatever the equivalent is in whatever country you live in. It's 123 pages, so it's not going to be a great investment of time. And I think you're going to get overcompensated for your entire investment of time or money in what you gain from Bierce's insight into human nature, into nature in general, into war, into relationships. I noted that I was going to talk about one scene with the child, and I failed to do so. I'll say that briefly. there's a child that's caught up in an attack. Child doesn't really know what's going on. Child hasn't been familiar with war. Most children aren't. And he happens to run into a retreat of soldiers. And a child, being a child, just being playful, and climbs onto the back of one of these soldiers as he were to play horse, on the back of the soldier. The soldier is fighting for his life, his jaw's off, he's bleeding, violently throws the child off of his back. But this juxtaposition of childish innocence and playfulness against the harsh reality of war, and I don't want to spoil that story, so I'll leave it there, that a child is forced to experience the horrors of war and what that means. And Bierce doesn't shy away from something difficult like that as well. So if you like this review, you'd like to see more of it, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, check out other videos that I've done. If you'd like to support work that I'm doing here, feel free to support my Patreon, which is also linked below, along with an Amazon affiliate link to buy this book if you'd like to. And hope to see you next time. Until then, enjoy your reading.